Okay, I'd like to welcome Teresa to come on the mic and introduce the event.
Thank you, Greta. I'm Teresa Elamine, based in Columbus, Georgia, in the United States. I'm the founder and board chair of the Southern Anti-Racism Network, and we're celebrating 25 years of community organizing. This webinar, AFRICOM out of Africa, is actually the third webinar on the military operations of the U.S. government in Africa, known as AFRICOM. It's sponsored by 4 organizations: the Convention for Pan-Africanism and Progress, CPP, the International Peace Bureau, Southern Anti-Racism Network, and World Beyond War. World Beyond War is allowing us to use their premium Zoom account, and they have set up the registration. And we just love that World Beyond War has done the heavy lifting for all 3 webinars. The first webinar was in December of 2020 as a collaboration between World Beyond War and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in the US section. And the second webinar was Southern Anti-Racism Network collaborating again with World Beyond War. And this third webinar is coming at a time when there's lots of war on the African continent. And Sean Connor of the International Peace Bureau is going to say a few words about why now. So if you could, Sean, please say the urgency of this moment. Greta and George Friday will introduce the speakers, and we do have 4 speakers for the webinar, and we will have Q&A. The webinar is expected to last about 90 minutes. But Sean, if you could say the urgency of the moment. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you to all the co-organizers of our event today. As Teresa mentioned, it could not come at a more important time. We're seeing, if we look across the world, really global tectonic shifts in geopolitical power, balance, as well as a rising of much of the global South against the hegemony of the US and the West in recent years towards a more fair and multipolar system internationally. However, this doesn't come without risks and without those who hold power hoping to maintain that power. In particular, I would like to highlight an occasion just about a year and 4 months ago, so 16 months ago or so, at the C7, the Civil Society 7 meeting, which is the civil society counterpart to the G7 gatherings. There, we had the chance to listen to the G7 Sherpa representing the Foreign Ministry of Italy at the time, but of course representing much larger the political and economic interests of the G7. And quite shockingly in the statement, she said, quote, Africa will be the battleground for democracy in the 21st century. Now, we know quite well that democracy in the Western world is not really so much of a value that they promote internationally, so much as a cover-up for much of their own interests, economic and otherwise, in the world. So when we hear that Africa will be the battleground for democracy, we understand this to be rather the battleground for influence, for dominance, and for economic interests of the West, of the G7 and their allies. So with this in mind, we see that already the West is eyeing Africa to make changes to ensure that the US remains dominant and that their economic interests remain the central focus. We strongly condemn this and push for a free and independent Africa. And today's session, I think we will go a bit more into depth about that. So I think now I will be turning the word back over to Greta and to begin the introduction of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sean and Teresa. So yes, we're going to begin our presentations. I want to welcome Gnaka Lagoke up to the microphone. Gnaka is an associate professor of history and Pan-Africana studies at Lincoln University and an author of several books. He is promoting a new vision of Pan-Africanism that stands upon the Ubuntu philosophy. So welcome. Please take it away.
Okay. Good morning. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Is it clear, right? I
Yes.
have always issues with technology. Okay, I want to thank Teresa and for the wonderful work she's doing, for contributing to my growth as a scholar, as a social activist, and then as an intellectual, by finding opportunities for me to express myself. I extend my great gratitude also to George and then to Greta, to Sean, all those who put this conference together, and then to Bekanti and then Music Kiala in Congo, who is also very supportive. And of course, I'm not going to forget Lucy Murphy, who introduced me to Teresa. I'm going to speak about AFRICOM and Pan-African consciousness. That's going to be my presentation. As you can see, what's up? Nothing is moving. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't know why
Can you use the little arrows in the bottom left or arrows on your keyboard to move
let
forward?
me see. I just see a lot of pictures on the right here. Okay, I'm
There you
here.
go.
Thank you. Okay, so the first slide summarize it all. Sean was talking about, the rise or the rebellion of the global south, and then how the Europeans want to maintain the domination. My conversation is going to be embedded in the world historical memory. Uh, I will not talk but about this racial theories, the Westman burden, the question of racism, social Darwinism, and how military, as a means of power, exploitation, and domination, fits in that conversation. And then, yes, it is more about great power politics than the fight against Islamic insurgency. And then I have a picture or an image which is about the will of imperialism. And then, yes, I have already done this presentation like a couple of years ago, but because of the context, I had to adapt it. And then, as you can see, what is in blue is that we have to have the conversation from the African perspective through the lenses of Pan-Africanism, and then the leadership, the Pan-African historiography, contributed to the expansion of the Pan-African my topic. That's why on the first of Captain Ibrahim Traoré from Burkina Faso, and then General Langley. Okay. So this is okay. Actually, I'm not going to have too many issues with technology. Quickly, two major moments in the history of the world and the history of Africa. Tordesillas, which divided the world into two. Uh, in the beginning of the age of exploration, Portugal and Spain, and then Pope Alexander VI divided the world into two. And then a couple of hundred years later, in the case of Africa, we have what people called the Scramble for Africa, when they met in Berlin and they divided Africa in different portions, apart from Ethiopia, which defeated Italy twice at two battles, Dongali 1887, Adwa 1896. Most of the continent of Africa was under the influence of the Europeans. What are the features of colonialism? Very important for the conversation. We have colonial states, colonial administration, forced labor, limited education, concessionary companies, and then the Afro-European armies as we're talking about military. Now, this is the map of Africa under colonialism. As you can see, all the colors, Africa was divided on into multiple spheres of influence controlled by the Europeans. Now, this is the slide that you saw so far. Basically, this is what I did last time, but this is a new thing that I'm introducing this conversation. Ghana, under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, became independent in 1957. And then Kwame Nkrumah, who went to school, who went to Lincoln University, where I'm teaching at, and then who was exposed to Pan-Africanism, who was at the Manchester Congress as one of the organizers, joined the struggle in Ghana in 1947,
Gnaka,
became the
sorry to
leader.
interrupt. There's a request if you could speak just a little bit slower.
Okay, sorry, okay. Sorry, okay. It's because of the 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, so Ghana became independent, and then Kwame Nkrumah was going to start a new series of Pan-African gathering. Pan-Africanism is about the unity and the solidarity of Africans, the people of African descent. And then they think one of the dreams is to build the United States of Africa. And then there were three important Pan-African conferences. The one in 1958 was in Accra. So the image that you see, that was one of the images of the conference in 1958, December. And then 1960, the conference took place in Tunisia, and the one in 1961, it was in Egypt. So when you have the opportunity to go and go through the documents and through the archives, you're going to see that the conversation we are having today, they had the same conversation as they were fighting against racism, colonialism, economic domination, and they were talking about how to remove the presence of of the European military from the African soil, particularly in 1960 and 1961. So later on, Kwame Nkrumah was going to talk about, he was going to publish a book, Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. In that book, then he expressed clearly what he meant by neocolonialism, and then he spoke about the military presence. So from slavery from slavery through colonialism to today, this is an image which I call the wheel of imperialism. By the way, it is in the book that I published on about the International Criminal Court. As you can see, military, NATO, military bases, and then AFRICOM. So just an image of the presence of the French military presence, and then the Europeans, as you can see, most of them are there. We have like the Americans, we have the Chinese, we have the French. The French have many more bases than any power. Maybe they're competing with the United States. And then this is the presence of AFRICOM on the continent. And then great power politics, a picture that I saw. And then the issue is that, or the conversation is that, where you see the African presence in blue, then it is somehow to counter some of those African countries. So
You're breaking up a little bit. Could you
now,
repeat the last sentence that you said?
yeah, I'm saying that the map in which you can see blue and then blue and red, where you can see that according to scholars, it is not so much the militant insurgency or the that justifies the presence of the, but it is to counter the exploitation of the presence of China and Russia. So here, uh, uh, so the fight against the military bases has been part of the Pan-African struggle. We have the World Beyond War. We have the other group, AFRICOM, that was put into place by some of the Black Americans here at Jammu. And in Africa, people, anytime they take to the street, they've been asking the European to leave. It happened in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. So that's the real debate. But anytime they ask some of those military bases to leave an African country, they go to another country. So Ivory Coast, my country of origin, has been negotiated with the Europeans so that they can have a stronger presence in our country. So the conversation about AFRICOM as a Pan-African consciousness mobilizer, the face that you see here is the General Michael Langley of AFRICOM. During a hearing before the Senate, he accused the Burkina Faso's leader, Traoré, of misusing the gold reserves for his personal safety. And then his statement was going to backfire because many people decided to organize and then to express support to Ibrahim Traoré because of several reasons. And one of those reasons is what I called the tragedy of the African leadership. The faces that you see over there. Uh, so you can recognize Mandela, 27 years in prison. On the left of Mandela on the screen, this is Sylvanus Olympio, the first president of Togo, who wanted to leave, remove his country from the CFA franc zone. Sylvanus Olympio was going to be butchered and killed. Next to Sylvanus Olympio, you have Patrice Lumumba in the case of Congo. We know how he was killed, and then his body was dissolved in acid. One of his teeth taken to Belgium to be there for 62 years. And then Malcolm X, we know what happened to Malcolm X, Dr. King. So the two people in color, the one with the beret, this is Gaddafi, was killed recently by NATO, and Laurent Gbagbo from Ivory Coast bombed by the European forces and the United Nations forces, and he was taken to the International Criminal Court. So that historical memory, that consciousness ingrained like in the minds in the hearts of Africans and people of African descent, and also many people from different races, or whites or Hispanics or Arabs, but who share the values of peace in the world. They mobilized because they knew that what the African leaders said could lead to the assassination of Ibrahim Traoré. So people organized from in different parts of the world, from the Caribbean, the United States, on social media. There was like a serious wave of support for Ibrahim Traoré because they saw him as the target of AFRICOM. In the light of the history of AFRICOM and in the light of the history of the military bases on the continent of Africa. So later on, AFRICOM had a meeting in Nairobi this year. We can see in the middle the president of Kenya, William Ruto, who allowed the holding of the meeting in Nairobi, and the General Mangle seized the opportunity somehow to backtrack from the statement he made. And then, so this is what I wanted to present. I think I respected my 10 minutes. The sources are there. The first one that you see is an article that I wrote in Teresa's friend's newspaper, Robin. It is about the conversation that I just had, how the issue of Ibrahim Traoré and AFRICOM led to the Pan-African mobilization, and how Ibrahim Traoré is seen today as the face of the Pan-African consciousness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And there's already a request for your slides, so we can follow up with you afterwards if you would be okay with including your slides in the follow-up email to the registrants.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to pass it to George next.
Hello. Thank you for that, Gnaka, and you made us start off in a good way. I'm happy to introduce Ann Wright. Ann was 16 years with the U.S. diplomatic office, and in 2003, she resigned after 29 years, either in the diplomatic office or colonel in the U.S. Army, and she resigned in opposition to the war on Iraq. Ann?
Thank you. Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I also, as a U.S. diplomat, served in Sierra Leone during the civil war that was going on in Sierra Leone, and I also was a part of UNISOM, which was the UN mission into Somalia. So I have had some experience in Africa with the U.S. government, and that's what I'll be speaking about here, about AFRICOM. If I could go ahead and share my presentation. Let's see. Okay, there we go, share. And we'll go back up to this one and play from the beginning, and we hope all of this will work. Yeah, there we go. So AFRICOM and NATO is really what I'm sharing about. Let's see, I'm trying to go forward.
Can you click that button that says continue to share in the middle of your screen?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so here we go. AFRICOM and NATO out of Africa. Here's the big logo of AFRICOM. You know, each one of the unified commands that the United States has, which has essentially as you know, the hegemony of the United States having the audacity to divide the world up in its military commands. And that's what this shows, that there is the portion for Africa, as well as for Europe, for the Indochina, Indo-Pacific, for the Southern Command of Latin America. So just that it has its fingers everywhere. And most of the material I'm going to talk about, you can find on the website for AFRICOM. They're pretty upfront about what they do. So if you want more and more information, here's the place to go. AFRICOM has a large staff, 2,000 people assigned, but interestingly enough, its headquarters is not in Africa because no African country wants it. So the headquarters is in Stuttgart, Germany, at the same location of the U.S. European Command. There are also subcommands in the United States for AFRICOM at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida, and also up in the UK. Each one of the embassies that the United States has, and I was part of the embassy in Freetown, Sierra Leone, has offices that are the cooperative offices for the militaries of the country where that embassy is. Foreign service officers like myself sometimes serve as the liaison with the militaries in these countries, and other agencies in the United States government may have liaisons with the militaries of all of these countries. The military command itself, AFRICOM itself, has various components, and they're located in different places. The U.S. Army's component of it is in Vicenza, Italy. The naval part is also in Italy and Naples. The air component is actually up in Germany at Ramstein Air Base, the largest air base the United States has in Europe. The Marine Corps contingent is in Germany. The task force for the Horn of Africa is in Djibouti. And then the special operations is also up in Stuttgart, Germany. The types of programs that the United States has that are implemented through the African Command are a wide variety, as you can see. Maritime law enforcement, humanitarian assistance, although under the Trump administration, there's not much humanitarian assistance, and that would be in times of civil disasters, of floods, of hurricanes, things like that, that the U.S. military could use its ships and aircraft and move materials that the U.S. government has stored in various parts of the world to help in local disasters. Then foreign military sales, which is the actual sale of U.S. weaponry to these militaries. And then an interesting one, Global Peace Operations Initiative. So the military has its own link of the peace, but its peace initiatives aren't all that good. It also sponsors training for the militaries of all of the countries, training both in the United States and then training in the host country at times. And the state partnership means that sometimes the National Guards of U.S. states have liaisons directly with specific countries in Africa. One of the most interesting parts is Gnaka mentioned about the numbers of U.S. military bases in Africa and other countries. Well, there is a reduction in them also, and that was from a military coup that happened in Niger. And the military government demanded that the United States withdraw its forces from 2 bases in Niger. And that the withdrawal of all the forces, which was over 1,000 U.S. military from some very large, geographically large bases that had up to 1,000 U.S. military there. One of them was a big drone base, and the other was a counterinsurgency base. The U.S. military training programs have been replaced by Russian trainers from the Wagner Group. What does AFRICOM has a bigger public relations team than, well, they're all big. So they are trying to get all sorts of media, positive media about the U.S. military in the region and in specific countries. So if you go on to the AFRICOM website, you can see a variety of articles of a logistics conference that was hosted in Liberia, and another conference on aeromedical exchanges hosted in Algeria, another one in Kenya, which was referred to just a moment ago. And then a very interesting one about chaplains, about religious leaders, winning the peace through religious collaboration. And here we have a picture of U.S. military chaplains with the religious leaders of various other religions in the African countries. So you never can tell how nefarious the U.S. military is going to go on this. So advertising this peace through religion is one of the programs that they seem to have now. The U.S. military has a lot of military exercises or war games that they do all over the world, and certainly in AFRICOM, and some with NATO forces. Here are just a list of several of them: African Lion, Cutlass Express, Flintlock, Phoenix Express. And just to mention that in 2024, the African Lion exercise took place across Morocco, Ghana, Senegal, and Tunisia. There were over 8,000 participants from 27 nations, including NATO nations. And it was, part of it was about shipping lanes, maritime shipping lanes, and trying to keep those open for capitalism is the way it goes. Another one of the exercises was Flintlock, which was focusing on counterterrorism, irregular warfare, bringing together special operations forces. And then another one was this one called Phoenix Express and Silent Warrior, which were both held in Tunisia. So these types of military operations under the guise of exercises go on every month in Africa. And an interesting part of it is that Morocco has turned out to be one of the locations where a lot of the training for African militaries is taking place. The Moroccan military itself provides free training, subsidized, I think, by the United States at every level of military education. And they now have created and will open up in September of this year a state-of-the-art peacekeeping center of excellence in Morocco that will train thousands of personnel. 3 years ago, in 2022 was the last time we had one of the webinars on AFRICOM. And at that time, I presented the number of airstrikes that AFRICOM had conducted. So I updated this from 2022 to 2025 with each of the years, 23, 24, 25. And if you'll notice at the top, there has been a remarkable increase in the number of strikes in Somalia, and that is under the Trump administration. This does not include the number of airstrikes that the U.S. has done in Yemen. Yemen is a part of the Central Command, the Middle East Central Command. And so you have right there in the Horn of Africa, you've got Somalia on one side and then Yemen over on the other. And the split in the two by the U.S. military commands means that we're not representing the huge numbers of airstrikes that the United States has done on Yemen in the past 3 years, as the Houthis support the trying to stop the Israelis for the genocide they're doing on Palestinians. And the Houthis have said if Israel will stop killing the Palestinians, they will stop sending rockets into Israel and also stop attacking vessels that are probably carrying fuel and weapons to Israel. I'll end this with an article that I wrote concerning my time in Somalia, which was, gosh, almost 30 years ago. And it's how the military operations of peacemaking, the very first peacemaking operation the United Nations ever attempted was in Somalia. And my estimation, my analysis of how that operation has influenced a lot of the operations the U.S. has done in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. So we thank everyone for your concern about U.S. militarism and particularly U.S. military in Africa. And let's continue to challenge the militarization of our world and how our own nation has done some pretty bad stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ann. Thank you for your tireless peace activism. Ann is all over the world, just got back from Japan and flies all over the world promoting peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So our next speaker is Manal Taha. Manal is an anthropologist and conflict analyst with over 20 years of experience in conflict mediation around the world, including in Sudan, South Sudan, Libya, Niger, Tanzania, and Bangladesh. And due to some electricity issues and power issues, I know that Manal cannot be with us live, but we do have a recording. So I will ask Sean to pull up that recording now.
Let me tell you about the root causes of the war in Sudan. So the government for the 30 years was a very conservative government that opened the government resources, privatized the government resources, government institutions to private sectors without a clear plan on how to do the social responsibilities, the social welfare. That's why I ended up on poverty, and they investing a lot on the military equipments, the small one, which is in Africa is the curse, because more of people killed in Africa by the small arms, more than the heavy arms. And Sudan government was in the past, during Omar al-Bashir, for 30 years, they invest on these commodities. So they also did something. They outsourced the Sudan security to militias, an armed group, which was supported by the regional power. For example, the RSF, Rapid Support forces who are actually now fighting the army. They were together fighting in Yemen against al-Houthi with support from US, Saudi, and Emirates. So this franchise of a different franchised or outsourcing military security is one of the issues of how Sudan actually now entering this war, because the government and this militia, they start to compete on resources. We don't have a lot of resources, especially after South Sudan such as got their independence and got their own, took the oil, which was a big of the revenue for the Sudan before 2011. So the paramilitaries, armed groups, they use ethnic rhetoric, pluralizations to gain their interest. Giving that, war in Sudan now, it's beyond imagination. The whole city of Khartoum, which is the capital, the biggest, it was 17 million people. Majority of them were displaced. Almost 11 million were displaced on the first 4 months. Following that, the war went to the other biggest state, Jazeera, and it's the biggest agriculture scheme. We lost it. The biggest looting on our century now, it's happening in Sudan. These thousands of four-wheel drives, cars, all the banks, hospitals be looted, transformed and smuggled to neighbor countries. So this is going to have a huge impact on the security and safety on the neighboring countries, especially West Africa, Chad, Niger, Mali, all these countries. I'm expecting things will come, things will appear. The Sudan spell on these countries, and the impact of Sudan war in this country will come with time. Maybe next year you're going to see something that, because of the weapons and resources and money, gold. Even the biggest refinery was smuggled. We are number 9 in the world for gold, number 4 in Africa. And the gold is our curse, because the competition around the gold, they smuggle it to UAE and they smuggle it to Russia. So this is the situation now. People are fighting, people are dying. If there was hunger or they were fighting between the national army and also the militia, which were in the past they were together, fighting together in Yemen. And this is the situation continue. We are expecting some peace deal or ceasefire deal. I'm going to talk to you about it, more details. So recently there is a peace deal. There was some attempt for ceasefire. All of them were failed, either in Geneva or before that in Jeddah, but were failed. Now there is attempt from the U.S. government to have ceasefire. While I'm talking to you, the news coming that the head of the army and the head of the paramilitary and the militia they are in Geneva talking. It's a secret talks. Gehowever, I don't think this Sudan war will going to be solved by peace deal. It's a genuine peace approach should be taken, which is community-led peace process. And the most important thing, trauma peace process, trauma-informed peace process. We don't have that. We have the biggest trauma. We have girls under 2 years were raped. We have hundreds of them raped. We have hundreds of men killed, thousands of killed. We don't have accounting. We don't have the number. We don't know how many people were killed because there are too many, and we don't have any support from international community. So we're expecting at least now we found that there is a 6 largest landmine in the capital of Khartoum. People want to come back because the militia now left the capital and the main cities, but we can't go back. We have a Fashir, the biggest city in Darfur, surrounding people dying because there's no food going in or out. And also Kadugli, kids are starving on the road, in the street, dying. So, and there's no media to reflect that. The support that could be given to Sudanese now is to pressure for peace, pressure for ceasefire, pressure for aid to come to the cities. We need everybody to talk to about Sudan because it's a forgotten war. It's forgotten war because, unfortunately, we are not being mentioned in the mainstream media. There's another. Every war is important. It should be stopped. Every lives are equally should be protected. But that is not the case in Sudan war. Nobody talk about it because I don't know what's the standard for them to measure this is important war and this is not important war. This is important lives and this is not important for life. So Ukraine was covered, Gaza was covered, less Sudan not covered, like way less than the two countries, although the deaths and the devastating and the hunger and everything here in Sudan is way beyond everybody can imagine. The people are suffering displacement. They live in the streets with no food, and if you walk, you will be killed because looting is something that people they live it in a daily life. So the situation is beyond I can imagine. I can't even describe it. Talk to your neighbors. Bring Sudan. We can't. I don't think the country has the resources now to solve it internally. Even I feel like war usually block the horizon of thinking. Narrow your options. Sudan is now looking for survive. So any interventions to help them to lift this load out, they will welcoming. So we would love to have the intervention that comes with love and kindness to Sudanese without thinking about resources and exploiting of the resources, which is very rare to happen from the international community. So I don't think the international governments can do anything. We need people of humanity to look at Sudan. It's very clear that the politicians, the international politicians, the national governments will not look at us equally. So we look for human being that they believe human should be equal to look to Sudan. And I'm going to leave you with that and thank you so much and I have a lot of videos for you guys, but unfortunately there's no internet here to load it and I'm in the desert. Sometimes we reach some areas with some internet. And that's why I took my chance for this voicemail to go to you guys. And thank you so much for listening to me. And I wish one day I will come in person and talk to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Manal, and for sharing those words and shining a light on what's happening there. And we hope that through this webinar, everyone can share this recording and spread awareness about what's happening in Sudan and promote peace. And I want to turn it to George to announce our last but not least speaker.
Yes, our last speaker is Aloys Mahwa. Aloys lives in Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He manages the Living Peace implementation activities across 5 provinces of the DRC, and he is the co-founder of the Interdisciplinary Genocide Studies Center to prevent mass violence and genocide, and is an activist in ending gender-based violence in the DRC across 12 Great Lakes region states. Aloys?
Yes, thank you so much, George, and also thank the audience for this fora. It's always a pleasure to link with Men Beyond War and now AFRICOM presentations. Yes, I lead the Living Peace Institute in DRC, and the Living Peace Institute is a local organization really try to promote positive masculinity as a foundation for sustainable peace. So our clear mission is really to help demilitarize masculinity by addressing the mental health and psychosocial support need of men affected by the violence. So coming back to my country, DRC have been always central for geopolitical resolution, arrangement, maybe to, for a reminder, the atomic bomb that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the uranium was extracted from the DRC Congo. And currently, the issue around critical minerals is becoming a strong tension between the US and also China. So I'll first present the situational analysis of DRC and then come back to the US involvement in DRC, maybe much more showing the landscape of mineral in my country. As you all know, the DRC covers 2 million kilometers square. So it is the second largest African country after Algeria. So if you see the population of DRC, 80% of them are living near other countries' border. So the belly of DRC is made of forests, only 20% of Congolese population living really in the really center of Congo. So this way of living of Congolese, it's always asking the question of national identity. So how are you Congolese? Who are Congolese? Because we always share identities with other countries of the borders and so on. So it's also a very weak presence of states. So the state of DRC doesn't succeed to really show its presence, manage the entire country as it's big, and most of the time also abandoned some areas, specifically remote area of DRC is controlled by armed group, rebels, and for example, from January this year, the M23 rebels is controlled 30,000 kilometers square of the DRC, and its impact 10 million people. Yeah. Also, DRC is neighboring some conflicted states like Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda. If you remember the genocide in Rwanda, so brought more than 3 million refugees in Eastern DRC, and that created really a lot of development, a lot of problems, a lot of humanitarian issues in Eastern DRC. And currently, Rwanda and DRC are still in tension around one movement of ex-genocidaires that is operating in Eastern DRC called FDLR. Apart from Rwanda tension, also Burundi has also its own rebels in Eastern DRC called the Red Tabara that creates also sometimes tension between Burundian government and also Congolese government. And currently we have the presence of a Ugandan army in Eastern DRC trying to look after ADF NALU, which is a Ugandan-based militia operating in Eastern DRC. So those lack of state presence in all the countries also creating tension between DRC itself and DRC and its neighboring countries. Internally, we have more than 7 million internal displaced people, and most of them are really located in the Eastern DRC. So in our advocacy, we usually try to raise our voice so that we can reduce militarization, but it's very difficult in the context of tension, conflict. We've seen our villages very hyper-militarized with the presence of the UN MONUSCO, multiple arms group, now M23 rebels, EAC, SADC forces was also operating in Eastern DRC. They've left 2 months ago. The Congolese army, the mercenary, and so on and so on. And most of the time, all these military are men, masculine. And masculinization and militarization always goes together. Yeah, so there is also deep psychological trauma because of a very long years of experiencing violence in DRC, now 30 years and more, where villages are not stable, even though the UN have tried, but the countries are still very unstable. So currently, the US government has closed the USAID. USAID was, Congo was the second largest beneficiary after Ethiopia, receiving USAID fund and support. Yeah, so this is why, for example, when the M23 controlled Goma, the internal displaced people couldn't stay in Goma because 90% of the aid was coming from the USAID. They have no choice than going back to their village, whatever stable it is, whatever fragile it is. I can also mention after M23 controlled Goma, the Congolese government has closed all banks. And now this is 8 months almost, where there's no bank operating here in Eastern DRC, where I live myself. And that creates also very long, strong humanitarian issues. Coming back to mineral landscape, personally, I don't like this subject of mineral because it's always politicization of minerals. So they try to politicize the minerals. Most of Congolese have never seen gold. They've never seen tantalum. They've never seen cobalt. Maybe they listen to it on radio, TV, and so on. So we've seen these minerals always controlled by external powers. 80% of minerals contracts in DRC are held by Chinese companies today. Most of those minerals are located in former Katanga region, 84%, and only 10% in Kivu. But when they talk about Kivu on TV, you have the impression that all minerals of DRC are in Kivu. But in reality, most of those minerals are in Katanga, and most of them are controlled by Chinese. So the drama around all those minerals is that 60% of Congolese live below poverty line. And there is also a lot of severe food insecurity. This is why when we try to also raise voice, we try also to say, okay, we should promote agriculture in this country than promoting minerals that are leaving people poor and poorer and so on. Currently, there is a tension between DRC and Rwanda, and the United States, I can say, imposed itself to try to mediate this conflict. And in June 27, there is a peace agreement that was signed between the Congolese government and the USA. So up to now, civil society organization doesn't really capture the real issue of this agreement, because they are seeing this whole negotiation of Congolese issue taking part out of Congo. For example, in Washington, Washington is becoming now the center to discuss the Congolese issue, the Congolese crisis. Doha is also, Qatar is also becoming very central to discuss conflict between the Congolese government and the M23. Yeah, so I mentioned this as a really a pity because internally in Congo we have a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources, and Congolese themselves can sit down and try to resolve their problems. So in conclusion,
Okay.
when trying to analyze African conflicts, experts are saying Congolese conflict is resolvable. It's really different from the Sudanese one. So this conflict, when Congolese sit, dialogue, talk, they can really bring peace and they can resolve those problems. Secondly, the military solution has failed. So I've seen when Goma was militarized, highly militarized, but this have never stopped M23 to take to control Goma or to chase the government forces and so on. Also prioritize Congolese solution. So the Catholic Church is investing in it, but it doesn't having a lot of opportunity to come up with its solution. Seeing mineral as a second, not a primal problem in DRC. Fight against corruption because corruption is also central to different conflicts happening in DRC because one government is also buying arms internationally. So it also comes with a lot of corruption, a lot of money that are disappearing in between. Focus on mental health and psychosocial support because this area people are really traumatized and see what we can see to support them. So I've seen.
We have to wrap it up.
Yep.
Yes, your 10 minutes is passed.
Yeah, I can say to conclude, unresolved problems in Congo are becoming political problems also, asking by civil society organization and also rebels group. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that important context about what's happening in the DRC. We have a number of questions that have come in, including a question for you that we'll get to. So we do have time here for about maybe 20 minutes or so of Q&A if we need that much time. Before we get into the Q&A, we do want to say that we will send out this recording afterwards. We will send out the PowerPoint slides and we'll also include some different resource links as well about what's been discussed. So the first question we would like to direct to Ann, which is the question of, we saw in your PowerPoint that incredible number of U.S. strikes on Somalia that you noted was increasing. Why is the U.S. bombing Somalia every year since 2016? Is this legal under an international law? What's happening?
Well, the bombing is from the U.S. point of view is trying to stop the Al-Shabaab group from its activities there, and also ISIS Somalia. So there are groups that are, at least in the view of the United States, are terrorizing the inhabitants of Somalia. And so that's why they are going after them. Of course, there are always two sides to the story, and but that's the rationale: Al-Shabaab and ISIS Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And the next question is for Gnaka. If you could tell us any news about the Pan-African Congress and what's going on in Togo. This is a question from Teresa.
Okay. The government of Togo, with the support of the African Union, is planning to organize the 9th Pan-African Congress according to the way of counting, or their way of counting, because there are several Pan-African gatherings that happened So they want to do the 9th one, and then they organized already 5 pre-congresses in the year 2023, 2024, and it was postponed, and then it is supposed to take place in December 2025, in the second week of December, from December 8th to December 12th. And then the topic of the Congress is about reforming international institutions. But at the same time, there is a serious debate. There are some who think that Togo does not have the legitimacy to organize that Congress for several reasons. One of the reasons is that Togo is seen as an anti-democratic country ruled by a dynasty, because the current president is the son of the one who was in power for more than 30 years or so. And then, so that is the conversation. And then there are some other people who think that the Congress should take place. It's an opportunity for Pan-Africanists and peace lovers to meet, discuss, and challenge those African leaders, including Togo, in the way that they conduct their business. So that is the update. And then recently, there were some riots, some uprising led by an artist called Amron, and who was opposing the fact that there was a change of regime that will allow the current president to extend his presence in power, despite the fact that he has been in power for 20 years. And some people were killed and some people were arrested. So it was a big debate, like in the Pan-African community and in the community of freedom seekers and justice lovers.
Thank you. And let's go to Aloys. There's a question for you about the recently signed agreement between Rwanda and the DRC that was negotiated by the US, and whether that can be really legitimate, or kind of what's the real story behind that, because we know that the US is complicit in a lot of this violence.
Yeah, thank you. My first disappointment is that in Congo, there's a lot of intellectual resources can bring together in one table belligerent, because all the belligerent are Congolese. Even Rwanda is a neighboring country, and find out solution. But the Congolese president, Mr. Tshisekedi, is the one who went to the US to meet with the US lobbies and say, okay, if you can help me resolve the problem of Rwanda, I can give you all minerals of Congo to the US. So that is becoming like a Trump deal to resolve this Congolese problem. So they are interested in minerals, and the Congolese government is ready to share those minerals with the US. So from the Washington perspective, they said they can't resolve themselves this issue with Congo. They have to bring also Rwanda on board, because Rwanda is a neighboring country, and for supply chain of minerals, Rwanda is a really nearest country if we want to take mineral from Congo to the US. So it's like we can pass through Rwanda and continue. So the US was seeing that it's important that also Rwanda become on board. And this deal signed in June 27th. So the content is mostly security in the region of Kivu. So to put an end to arms group, the shared of resources between Rwanda, Congo, and the US, not only mineral resources, but also environment, water resources, tourism, So they call it share prosperity. So they want to share prosperity, thinking that if prosperity is shared, tension between countries, conflict between countries can be resolved. So this still presumption. So we still concrete action to see if really this deal, American deal, can come to a sustainable solution for peace between Rwanda and Congo, and also internally to Congo itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a lot of good questions coming in the chat. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. This one is a follow-up question for you, Aloys, and also any of our speakers are welcome to comment on it, which is, how can we promote negotiation processes that are involving indigenous communities, that are involving women, instead of always, these men in, boardrooms in Washington, D.C. and far off places? Any response to that?
Yeah, so mostly, as I said, Congolese government is not present in all Congo. And the remote area are the really abandoned communities. And trying to promote community-based solutions is more sustainable than trying to promote enhancing capacity building at government level. Yeah, so we've seen by our experience with the Living Peace Institute, if we invest more in community-based approaches, because the Living Peace intervention is community-based approaches, we have in community minimum of structures like church leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, traditional leaders that will remain in the community, whatever government we have. So investing in them, it's also providing them a kind of solution for their own communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann, I see you unmuting. Did you want to respond to that too?
Yeah, well, there aren't too many examples around the world, much less Africa, of women that have been actively involved in some of these negotiations. So it's a worldwide problem that we have of trying to get more women, more indigenous populations involved in these things. And it's a struggle against those that already have the power that don't want to give it up. But some of the crazy things that can sometimes happen, in Liberia, the one phase of the civil conflict there was brought about by women, and women organizing and putting pressure on governments. And in fact, Nobel Peace Laureate Gabi was, she and her women of strength really forced the if I remember right, the Parliament of Liberia, they just kind of surrounded it, said, you guys cannot leave until we get this settled, that we have a peace agreement and a way forward. And she, Lamé Gobi, was one of the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize for her very strong leadership on that. So every now and then we have women who come to the forefront and are able to really push for peace. All too frequently, the women that we've had in positions of power have not been particularly peaceful people. I mean, we've got a whole list of women who have been secretaries of state who have promoted wars. We have the recent example of Vice President Kamala Harris, who refused to speak out on the genocide going on in Gaza. And that probably cost her a great deal in the election. Because so many people were seized with the fact that the Biden administration was complicit in this genocide going on in Gaza. So it's a challenge, and getting the right people, whether it's men or women, but people that actually believe in peace rather than shooting people, is a real challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and the story of the Liberian women's movement is just absolutely inspiring, as you mentioned. There's an incredible film called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. I put the link in the chat, and we showed that a few years ago at our film screening, and we had one of the women who was involved, speak at the event, and it was just really, really powerful. So I encourage people to look at that. Yeah. And I do see there's been a couple of questions coming in about Sudan. Unfortunately, Manal was not able to join us live, but we can certainly share these questions with her afterwards and try to share some follow-up resources in our follow-up email. We have a time for a little bit more discussion. So this is a question for everyone, which is a big one, which is basically how should the world outside of Africa behave? Should countries completely stay out of the conflicts in Africa? What would meaningfully help Africans? What would economic cooperation with the West and with China ideally look like? So that's a big one, and I'll open that to anyone. Yeah, George.
All right.
Oh, I see George has a hand up.
I do. You can go after me, Aloys, because you probably have a take on this. I think it would be ideal if each area, neighborhood, community met in some fashion. Maybe it starts with a cultural celebration or an acknowledgement of a historic date, but that as many people as possible get together, removing as many barriers as possible. I mean, removing barriers such as transportation, food, housing, or childcare or adult care, and they determine what what do we want to do about X situation, and they define the situation, they define the solutions, and those solutions are funded by the so and so's who profit from that region's wealth. That's my dream. It's not practical. It's not realistic because I don't do that. Not that my intention is to be impractical or unrealistic. I just don't take those terms in my thinking about solutions.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Aloys, did you want to jump in as well?
Yes. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, I think Africa needs to be liberated from colonial mentality. We don't find African government thinking that they can provide water and electricity to their population. They can provide food to their population, education, health. So those basic needs for the population, we always call out and also in case of conflict, so Africans think they have to resolve conflict by calling out again the external resources, external forces. So yeah, it's very interesting to Africa to think that solution is can come from out. When we see also civil society organization, most of us, we are funded by external fund. And we really don't see Congolese government, African government investing in civil society organization, funding the effort civil society organization. Survivors are nationals, internally displaced people belong to countries, but we don't see effort from countries to really resolve these needs. It's as if I was happy when Trump closed the USAID. It gives us really it pushes us, it puts us in the front of good reality that if people are sick, they are Congolese. The Congolese government has to treat them and provide them medication. They are not Americans. Of course, they've been helping, and it's good that we really shift also in terms of mind when budgeting at national level, thinking that we can provide assistance to the nationals. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to bring Gnaka into this conversation as well. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. And Teresa had a comment that I think you might want to respond to, which is, is there any activity uniting Africa for Africans? Is unity being worked on in any deliberate manner?
Okay. Thank you, Greta, for your great skills of moderator. And so I did not want to jump into the previous conversations because I wanted to give time to other people to say something. The question that that you said, Teresa asked, I'm going to combine that with a question that I just saw in the group chat, and somebody was talking about what we think about the effort to decolonize in Burkina Faso. So I'm going to combine those two questions. I think that people are trying. That's the reality. But I'm going to be very frank in the conversation I'm going to have when I talk about it. We commend them. We respect the efforts in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Senegal. So we know that the Pan-African consciousness is on the rise. But there are three things that I don't see happening from the people who are talking about, who are the vanguard of the Pan-African consciousness. Three. The first one is the absence or the lack of an endogenous value system as the paradigm around which, to promote the vision of sovereignty. The second element is that they have not changed the educational system. And then that's something that I can't understand. Pan-Africanism is not particularly taught in those schools, in those countries. Anyway, they have not changed the educational system. That's point number two. And point number three, I was in Senegal, I was in Ghana, and I went to Burkina Faso. In Burkina Faso, I had some conversations with people, and then the Minister of Burkina Faso, who was Ibrahim Traore. I had a conversation with him about how they're going to engage. That was the question. How do Americans, those Afro-Caribbeans, and those white people or Arabs or different parts of the world who express. I was trying to organize start like a series of Pan-African conferences. So when you have a conversation with them about that, we are concrete. We don't want to waste time in the talk. And I say, but the people were mobilized when they had the feeling that Ibrahim was the target of AFRICOM. So how do you rally them? How do you engage a permanent conversation? And then so it is not easy. Even the people who are in power, I don't think that they understand, what is really at stake. Yes, sovereignty, but how do we do sovereignty if you know how to mobilize all the people who have sympathy? So this is what I will say. Yes, we are trying. When I say we, I'm talking about you guys, those who are here, some other people in different parts, to try and have that movement that started in Bandung, like in with the conference, the Bandung conference. We want to see that Afro-Asian solidarity or that global South movement. I know there are many things that are happening, but we need to have a stronger movement. It is only when we can promote Pan-Africanism and we can promote internationalism in the name of peace, that we can bring some change, because Africans alone, they can't do it. It never happened like that. Anytime you are engaged in a struggle, you need allies, you need support, because you are facing those who are very, very powerful, who have been ruling the world for the last 500 years. This is what I will say. So the meeting in Togo, if it takes place, can be an opportunity for people to meet. And there are many other meetings that we will be working on. So if it is successful, then we will inform you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping us up. So I want to pass it back to Teresa and Sean for any concluding words. And then at the very end, we'll have a closing song to close us out.
Teresa, would you like to go first, or should I?
Don't you, Sean? So grateful for you.
Thank you, Teresa. So I'll be quite quick here because we are low on time, but just to try to briefly summarize and also make a call to action here. We know that solutions lie in the local movements and communities across Africa, together with the solidarity of international organizations and activists, to together design joint efforts to end imperialism, militarism, and extractivism across the African continent, and to promote the independence, sovereignty, and goodwill and prosperity of the region. Through both internal organizing and external pressure on predatory states, together alongside education, organization, and action, we can make change. Very quickly, just to also respond to briefly some of the questions on Sudan here, because we've been in close contact with Manal here and a few other activists, just to say that, again, it is particularly women's networks across Sudan that are leading the charge for peace, that are leading the charge for humanitarianism and well-being. Unfortunately, we find, on one hand, these groups do not receive attention in the media or otherwise, and that they do not have the necessary funding and resources. So here, I think particularly as well, there's a strong role for us all here today to carry Manal's message forward and to promote and support these women's groups for peace in Sudan and, of course, all around Africa. So thank you very much.
I would just like to urge everyone here in the U.S. To really do more to stop the empire from doing the bad stuff around the world. I live in Columbus, Georgia, which is the home of Fort Benning, a very large military base that is the School of America's, the Western Hemispheric Institute for Security Cooperation, doing a lot of bad stuff in the global South, and it's the largest employer of the civilian population. And I will urge all of my U.S. comrades and sisters and brothers that we must do more in the U.S. to stop the empire and the evil it does around the world. And thanks to all of you for coming. There will be more as we get ready to continue to talk about women in conflict zones, which we may have another webinar in March of 2026 on women in conflict zones in particular. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.